Biggie and Big Pun were the best storytellers of the 90s. I would get wrapped up in the narrative of what they were talking about. Part of the work is determining through what instrument you are playing. Actors are physical, Olympian storytellers, and we should be able to create entire landscapes with nothing. Listen to great storytellers. Slowly, you will learn about voice, timing, tension, structure, climax, all the things you need to tell stories that will capture the imagination of your audience. My interpretation of a strong director is someone who knows their story. That's what directors are, they're storytellers because they're directing where your focus is going to be as an audience. Founders are often great storytellers because they're in the business of constantly selling a dream against all odds. What I find interesting about folklore is the dialogue it gives us with storytellers from centuries past. Indians are marvelous storytellers. In some ways, that oral tradition is stronger than the written tradition. I think our storytellers, our songwriters should be great storytellers, and they should be mountain climbers and explorers, because music is something that can cross all different borders. When you face up to bad things in the past, the most important thing is not to allow them to happen today or in the future, and as storytellers, we must play our part in that. In 21st century storytelling, all bets are off, anybody can do anything. We're all storytellers. Vince McMahon is one of the greatest storytellers of all time, but WWE's not striving for the kind of innovation it's capable of. I think all Latino actors want to be storytellers first. I want to be an actor first, and then I want to be Latina. Painters were also attorneys, happy storytellers of anecdote, psychologists, botanists, zoologists, archaeologists, engineers, but there were no creative painters. My family are all storytellers, and I think I inherited a lot more of that gene than other people in my family. I guess I was fun to have around. I began telling stories as a volunteer in my daughter's school, but I grew up hearing stories from Cuban and Southern storytellers, and I learned a great deal by just being quiet and listening. I've always thought stand-up comedians were the oral storytellers of our time, because they know rhetoric, they know delivery, they know timing. They know all of these things that you can only learn by telling a story out loud and interacting with an audience. I like the fact that I'm from the South and that I have this rich history behind me. I come from a family of storytellers. They can't just tell you how someone went to the store. They have to tell you who they saw, what they were wearing, what they said, what they had in their grocery cart. Master storytellers like Jeffrey Archer and Arthur Haley use simple language, but they manage to grab the attention of the readers right from page 1. I'll consider myself a good storyteller the day people believe it's okay to be late for work or postpone deadlines just to finish reading my book. Each time, storytellers clothed the naked body of the myth in their own traditions, so that listeners could relate more easily to its deeper meaning. Country music has always been about as close to R&B as you can possibly get. We're storytellers. Before we were born, a whole society of storytellers was already here. The storytellers who were here before us taught us how to be human. Because if we the storytellers don't do this, then the bad people will win. Because storytelling, and visual storytelling, was put in the hands of everybody, and we have all now become storytellers. To be able to make up stories has been a great gift to me from my ancestors and from the storytellers who were so numerous at Laguna Pueblo when I was growing up. I learned to read as soon as I could because I wanted stories without having to depend on adults to tell or read stories to me. All directors are storytellers, so the motivation was to tell the story I wanted to tell. That's what I love. What kind of people would be able to rationalize better than other people? Better storytellers, right? Creative people. Right? Because if you're creative, you find more ways to cheat and steal yourself a story about why this is okay. There are millions of women all around the world who are in dangerous, terrifying situations. It's up to us as storytellers to give people hope, to let people know that there is a way out. Everybody in my family were great storytellers. My dad and his brothers would just go on and on. They could tell amazing stories. I think it was something to do with the Celtic, oral storytelling tradition. People very much had that propensity towards telling tales. Storytellers all, we humans might run out of time even as we triumph over the problem of running out of space, but we will never run out of stories. I was never academically driven in English, but, again, Tom Waits is a perfect example of an influence. He writes so immaculately and paints so perfectly a world and the characters within it. There are writers like that who are my influences, vivid and gifted storytellers. People love talking about writers as storytellers, but I hate being called that. It suggests I got it from my grandmother or something, when my writing really comes out of silence. If a storyteller came up to me, I'd run away. Well, here's what I'll say. The storytellers of Lost have taken us on a pretty great journey, and there have been questions along the way, and criticisms along the way. But if you look at the totality of the show, or the experience of it as a whole, I think as long as you look at it from that perspective you'll be happy. I've always liked and appreciated storytellers like Gary Shandling and Bill Cosby, more long-form comedy. So starting in San Francisco, watching all these great comics, Patton Oswalt, Dave Chappelle, you get to see them a bunch, and you go, wow, this is where I need to be. I was a super-duper Tupac fan, and I realized later, when I became a huge Nas fan and a huge Eminem fan, I was drawn to the storytellers. They all told stories in different ways, but they were all like the best storytellers. Not all poetry wants to be storytelling, and not all storytelling wants to be poetry. But great storytellers and great poets share something in common. They had something to say, and did. I come from a family of great readers and storytellers. The tradition of the South is not urban. I think we are a region of storytellers, naturally, just from our tribal instincts. We did not have the pleasures of the theater or the dance, motion pictures when they came along. We simply entertain each other by talking. To be a black person is to come from a long bloodline of survivors and storytellers, with a resilience that people can't even comprehend. I think it's too fast to say that all sci-fi ultimately winds up having some place in science. On the other hand, imaginative minds working outside of science as storytellers certainly have come upon ideas that, with the passing decades, have either materialized or come close to materializing. I am not attempting to preserve culture, or record actual events or stories. Instead, I bow my head in gratitude to those storytellers who have gone before and paved a way for me play in their stomping grounds. Doubtless those who want to be offended, will, allowing me to make them happy, too, which pleases me as much as it pleases them. I don't know if Jim was a major part of that or not. He is one of a small group of real storytellers. He has enormous imagination and ability to write. I'm glad he's coming back. It's going to be good for the show. People would go from village to village with their books in a time of poverty and disease. They would get people around them, and for an hour, these storytellers would change people's lives. I'd always thought I was a reincarnation of that. That's who I want to be. I'm actually quite critical of the storytelling theme. I think all the storytellers are not storytellers. I was at the University of Miami, and I still had, like, a semester or so left. And through the film school, I found out that Al Gore was launching a new TV network. They were looking for passionate young storytellers to transform television, which was, like, ambiguous but magnificent sounding. My whole family are hams. They're storytellers and everyone outdoes the next one. All of my peers died of AIDS, and I have no one to celebrate my past or my journey, or to help me pass down stories to the next generation. We lost an entire generation of storytellers with HIV. Writers are storytellers. So are readers. Kids are so fiercely opinionated, that if they love the Harry Potter books and they go see the movie, they'll be the first to say, that was wrong. They didn't get that right. They're storytellers themselves. They're critics. They're going to have the critical opinion. My mom worked as a pharmacist, but she is one of the best storytellers I know. My sister is a gospel and opera singer, and my brother, who passed away, was a writer. I believe that even today we can only tell a simple story without really interfering with gameplay. But in the future, I think it will almost be a requirement of all storytellers when they create games, how they can tell a more complex story without conflicting with the gameplay. Visit our website for more quotes, quoting.com.